Hey, have you heard about Anchor? You probably haven't heard about Anchor yet, so let me tell you about it. Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. You probably hear other people talk about how they make podcasts. If they say it's easy, they're crazy. All of their methods are really hard and complicated, but Anchor, super simple. First off, it's free. They have creation tools that let you make the podcast right from your phone. You don't even need a computer. This is 2019. Who uses computers anymore? Anchor distributes your podcast on all the other platforms. No need to go do all that complicated searching and hosting and posting. Hosting and posting. They do it for you. You can also make money from your podcast. Well, that's what I'm doing right now, because you're listening to this ad. They've got everything you need to make a podcast in one spot. No need to search around all over the place. No need to go to 20 different sites. Just one. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Bet you thought I was going to sing right here, didn't you?
Are you looking for the hottest news out of the obstacle racing scene? Want to stay up to date on the freshest info, the latest podiums, and hear interviews with the who's who in OCR? Well, you've come to the wrong place. Well, some of that you'll find here. But we're not the media. This is not ORM, OCM, OCRM, ORCM. This is OCR Talk.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jason Dupree, and
I'm Anna Landry.
We are here with OCR Talk, the very first episode, and we are here, as you heard in the intro, not to be a media source. We're here just to talk about current events, but really just to be a conversation. So we're going to start out, and we've got lots of stuff to talk about, but we're going to have a place online. We're going to have a Facebook group, and hope that all you guys join this. But we really want everybody to join in on the conversation there. So we talk about it, and you listen, and you're going to have things that pop up, and you're like, oh yeah, well, you didn't mention this. So join us there, and it's going to be awesome because we're just going to continue the conversation from this episode on Facebook. So let's jump right into it. Anna, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. It's pretty good.
How's your race season starting so far this year?
I'm doing a lot of road races right now. Not too many OCRs lined up as of yet. I think I've got Savage lined up sometime. We're still deciding if we want to do Houston, Spartan, and I'm really just focusing on training for Toughest in Austin and World's Toughest. So we'll see how that goes.
Nice. Yeah. I have done the Spartan in SoCal, and I'm going to actually get into that later because it was a very interesting race for me for several different reasons. But what is your next race?
My next race, let's see, I had a trail race last weekend. I had a half marathon this weekend, and I have another half marathon next weekend. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, just ramping up the mileage right now.
Yeah, well, that's perfect for World's Toughest and the toughest events. I guess before we get into the first topic, people that are listening to this, they might be saying, who in the heck are these two people, and why do I want to listen to them? So first off, I think it's cool to know that you and I are both from the New Orleans area. And I say that I grew up in Ponchatoula. And where are you from? Baton Rouge?
No, I actually grew up where you're living at now. I grew up in Dallas, and I moved to Louisiana.
Oh. Nice. That's funny.
Opposite.
Yeah. So I'm in Dallas now, hanging out with the Lone Star Spartans, doing a lot of races with them. And you're down in Baton Rouge?
I go between Lafayette, Louisiana and Baton Rouge. So I'm down here with the Battle 611 group.
Nice. Very nice. All right. That's cool. I've been doing OCR since 2013. I actually started with a good friend of mine, Mark Duplessis, and have just gotten more and more into it. And so much into it that I'm sitting here recording a podcast. So
What about you? I had kind of a similar story. I am, compared to everybody else around me, I'm kind of a newbie to this sport, surprisingly enough. I got into it back in 2015, I want to say. The start is kind of fuzzy, but I started running and I started signing up for some road races locally. And then I guess since I started registering for road races, all these obstacle course races and Spartan races started popping up on my browser and my ads and in my news feed and everything. So I decided to check it out. And actually, my first race was the Super in Austin. And my very first Spartan race, I signed up in the competitive heat. And I had no clue what I was getting myself into. But it was there that I met somebody from Lone Star Spartans, and we did pretty much, he kind of helped me through the race. And that's how I got involved in that group too. So that was kind of my entry into the sport. And that was all she wrote for me. I was hooked from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love being part of, obviously there are race groups all over the place, but I love kind of having a home in both Lone Star Spartans and the Battle 611 group. It's pretty awesome.
Right. And it's just the sense of community, the fact that these two groups can come together and, attend some awesome events together.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a big thing is I think not a lot of people, but some people are kind of diehard to one particular race brand. And I know for myself, I love doing every single one of them. I try to get in as many different ones as I can.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm kind of the same way. Once I tried Spartan, I was hooked, like I said, and that's whenever I started venturing out and wanted to try out other brands because, variety is the spice of life. So why not mix it up a little bit?
Right.
But yeah, I actually still have yet to do a Savage. The very first Savage I went to, I ended up not signing up for the race, but I volunteered at the medical tent. So that was my first experience with Savage. And it was killing me to be on the sidelines, but
yeah, well, I know you're you run elite and you're pretty good, so you should definitely do Savage. The mandatory obstacle completion. It's a lot of fun.
Yes, and their obstacles look insane for this year. I know we're going to talk about that later, but I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, yeah, and so you do elite
sometimes.
What's some of your I guess achievements so far?
Most of the Spartans that I've ran recently, I pretty much finished top 10 age group pretty consistently. So I was pretty excited about that. I think probably the most recent one I had was our last race in Florida last year. I placed first in my age group. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
Or was that this year? No, that was at the end of last year because it was in December. And I was supposed to do the Beast the day before, but we had that crazy freak snowstorm here in New Orleans. And I actually didn't I was supposed to fly out of New Orleans at noon, didn't end up flying out of New Orleans until 6:00 that night. So I didn't actually get to Florida until just about midnight. So I'm like, there's no way I'm running a Beast the next day. I really want to, and I know I'm already signed up for it, but there's no way. There's just no way.
Yeah, I usually sign up for elite unless it's one that has two different categories. Like Spartan's got the elite and the competitive, which is now age group, and that's what I kind of fit into because I'm not as Ryan Atkins or Hunter McIntyre or those guys. So the age group definitely fits me a little more, and usually I'm like, I don't know, in between 15 and 50 in the age group.
Yeah, the guys' competitive field is just stacked, though.
It is
compared to the women's. There's a lot of phenomenal women in elite, running elite and age group, but compared to the guys' competitive field, it's rough. I gotta give it to y'all for running elite because I couldn't hang for sure.
Well, I've said multiple times, if I could run in the women's heats, I might stand a chance to podium.
I mean, you could just
Which is no
identifying with a different that
Right,
day,
right.
you know, depending on who you identify with that day.
Yeah. And that's no put down on the women out there. I
No,
know there are
absolutely
definitely plenty of them that would whip my tail.
Absolutely not. And I know there's a few women out there who have handed it to men pretty badly.
Oh, yeah. Well, we got a lot to talk about. This being our first episode, we've kind of been keeping track of just what's been going on since the year started.
Mm-hmm.
And we got a full list of topics. And I think it's going to be a fun and interesting episode because a lot of it's pretty recent news, too.
Right.
Like we said, we don't want to make this a media source. And I know I don't plan on going out and doing interviews and stuff. And I want it to just be a conversation about what's happening lately because that's what I enjoy. And I know you're the same way. You enjoy just talking about the latest, what's going on in OCR. But I got to hand it to the groups, like Obstacle Racing Media and Muttering Guide and Will Hicks over at World's Toughest Pod. The Mudsticle team over in Europe, they are constantly on top of stuff. Strength and Speed, Overcome and Run, and even the new OCRM, so not ORM, but OCRM, with Laura Mesner and Benny Gifford. They're doing some pretty cool stuff there, too. Have you checked that out yet?
I have. And Benny Gifford is also collaborating with Hunter. I don't know if you checked out their Obstacle Dominator podcast.
Yeah.
For people like that, I mean, they're the ones that inform us. So give us something to talk about.
My news feed comes from, just getting all the race emails and looking at the Facebook pages for all the different groups. And there's a lot to know about for sure. So it's good to have something like this and obviously all the other sources that we have to keep on top of what's happening for those people that that's what we enjoy, is just staying on top of the thing we love, right?
Yep. I'm geeking out on OCR for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think one of the first things that came up this year was the Savage Race, the Blitz format.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't do as much ads for their new obstacles as they did their Blitz, because I was definitely seeing a lot more ads for their Blitz format, which I guess the short course is starting to become a lot more popular with a lot more people, because especially with a lot of beginners that are just getting into OCR, they don't want to do all the crazy distance OCRs, which is completely understandable, or the people that are trying to more specialize in short courses. So yeah, that was really interesting. I was seeing a lot more about the Blitz format than I was about their new obstacles.
Yeah, and to clarify, the Blitz format is, I think, a 5K.
Yes, I think it's a 5K.
Yeah, and I really actually liked the way they advertised it, because I know with Tough Mudder, they've done their shorter races and said, if you don't want to do the full, 10 miles is a long ways, you want the easier course, come and do the half, and now do the 5K. But with this, they really promoted it towards the competitive side of people.
Yeah, they kind of catered to both sides, like the beginners and the competitive people. There's been a lot of talk especially with TMX too, their short course, but that's more of like a hybrid OCR CrossFit, it seems like to me. I haven't done one yet personally, but yeah, the Blitz format, it definitely catered to a lot of the competitive short course people that are looking for a lot more short course competitions out there.
Yeah, come run it fast, come blast through the obstacles. Yeah, it sounds like a good time though.
Yeah, I just wonder how they're going to condense, like what they're going to decide which obstacles go into that shorter format, because their longer length, what is it, like 7 or 8 miles is their usual length, I think. Mm-hmm. And, they have a certain number of obstacles in that length of course. So I wonder what kind of obstacles are going to be in that shorter format.
Yeah, I could imagine them doing kind of how Spartan does whenever they shorten a course from a super to a sprint. So basically there's a loop out on the outside that you don't do, and you cut across and then fill in the gaps that way.
Right. I just hope they don't make it like how Spartan does their sprints now, which I understand why they did, how they made them almost like a light version of their races, to where the rigs are just rings, so they're easier to get across. I hope it's more competitive and it's still technically difficult, enough for it to be a challenge for beginners, and it's enough to be a challenge for those that are competing as well.
Yeah, well, that's how they've advertised it. So I could imagine that being the case for sure.
I'm hoping so. Which, like I said, I understand why Spartan did their thing, and I think it was pretty smart of them, because it seemed, looking at both of the OCR communities that I'm in, it seems to be working and attracting more people, and it seems to be working for them. So
yeah, absolutely. I know Savage. I think it was part of their Savage Syndicate Facebook group where they did an online or a live interview with themselves, a live broadcast where they were answering questions, which I think was pretty awesome. And that really brings up the topic of just Facebook groups in general, where they have one, for those that don't know, they have one that is it's called Savage Syndicate group, but you don't have to have done 2 of their races. But more than likely, if you're in there, you probably do at least one of theirs a year. And so it's interesting. They really put out a lot of information that day when they did that live stream. And I think that's really good and awesome on their part to help people understand what they're up to.
For sure. And I think social media is being a huge outlet for, like, Tough Mudder did their live feed on World's Toughest last year, and Spartan's starting to do live Facebook feeds on their races. So as far as reaching out to more people and being more accessible, and just reaching out to the community and informing people of what they're up to.
Yeah, and with it being a group, that's a big part of what OCR is, unlike a lot of other sports where it is the community is a huge part of it. So if for those people that are out there that aren't really part of a lot of groups, like if you're in the Texas area and you're not part of Lone Star Spartans, get in on that, because you're going to find people are very welcoming, and that stuff is really important to help keep you on top of your focus and your training and all that stuff. And so do it.
And it's a really good outlet to ask. I know the running joke is, people always asking, what kind of shoes do I wear? So, we've asked that a million times, but it's also been answered a million times. And you will always get such good information from people that have been in this since the beginning. And that was really another thing that really hooked me, was that everybody was just so welcoming. Like, I know this is a complete stranger I'm meeting on the course, and like all of a sudden I was a part of this really awesome community, and, we were getting together and trading tips, and, oh my gosh, what do I pack for this race? And how was this race last year? What do I expect? I mean, it's just a wealth of information for people just getting into it, or, even if people are traveling to races that they've never done before, maybe somebody else has done it in the past. So, I mean, it's just a really good source of information for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to Savage Race, talking about their new obstacles, they've got, or from what I've seen, 3. Is that what you've seen?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Holy Sheet, Battering Ram, and Pedal to the Metal. Do you you feel like you got a grasp on what those are?
The first 2, yes. Pedal to the Metal, I don't know. I'm not sure about that one. But yeah, so definitely the first 2. The first 2, so the Holy Sheet is basically just a rig, and then it's almost like you have the ball and the grips, and then you transition to a sheet that's just hanging there. And it's just hanging there, and you just have to make your way across, almost like the straight bar on the Spartan rigs, except it's a sheet.
Yeah, I think it's a funny obstacle to describe.
Right.
Because, it's like, I'm going to do you got some bars and some balls, and then there's a sheet.
Right. It's
like off your bed.
Like they just took it off the bed and they just hung it there.
Yeah. And it's honestly very similar to the rig that they have had in the past. And I know I saw in Dallas this past year where part of it is a horizontal rope. And so that horizontal rope it doesn't have tension all the way through it. So you grab a part of it and it sinks with you as you pull across.
That's definitely going to be a challenge.
Yeah. So that it makes a difference. It does. And then on the ends, this is a different from the rope, where the rope doesn't have this. The ends, so it's like the sheet is tied, but then there's another 2 foot hanging off the end, so you can grab that as well.
So that's fair game as well.
People do towel pull ups.
Yes.
So people that practice that will probably kill it.
Oh yeah, I haven't done too many towel pull-ups lately, but I guess I'm gonna have to start doing them again.
Yeah, for real.
For sure. But I really wonder how that's going to hold up during the day. That thought just popped in my head. I wonder how that sheet is going to hold up for the whole race. Like, I really hope it's a really good quality sheet.
Yeah. Are they going to put it after a wet and muddy obstacle? That's going to make a big difference.
Oh yeah, for sure. I didn't even think about that. That's a good
People are going to be wiping their hands on the sheet and then like, oh wait, I got to grab this to get
Exactly. Is it going to be absorbable? Like, is it going to absorb?
What is the thread count on these sheets?
Exactly. That's a valid point.
The rougher the thread count, probably the better it would grip.
True. Very true. And it keeps the cost of the rig down as well. It's a win-win.
But if they make it like a silk sheet, that would probably be tougher. That
would just be killer on the arms. That would just, I don't even know at that point. I don't even know. That's definitely going to be interesting to watch this year.
Yeah, that's going to be real interesting to see. All right, what do you think about Battering Ram?
Battering Ram looks fun. It reminds me of a lot of the Ninja Warrior obstacles that you see. So that one looks really fun. That one's going to be definitely really grip intensive, and just like any rig, it's going to be really demanding on the upper body, but go ahead and describe it a little bit. So it's basically like a cylinder around a pole that you just have to grab and shimmy your way across.
Mm-hmm. From what I've seen in the videos, it doesn't look like you see in Ninja Warrior, where the thing you grab is about 6 inches in diameter.
Right. No,
it looks a lot smaller.
It's a lot smaller. It's almost like, what do they use for those post hole diggers that have the handles on the side whenever you're digging post holes? I don't know. Yeah. I've seen those a few times in my life. I don't know. But yeah, it looks like almost one of those fit over a pipe, and then you just...
Yeah, but quite interesting because you got to shimmy down it, but at the same time, that thing spins. So if you try to grab it from one side, it's going to be tougher.
Right. It looks fun. Definitely looks fun. It's like it does kind of remind me of the Ninja Warrior obstacles a little bit, but definitely a lot more difficult.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one too. Very challenging, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
Now, Pedal to the Metal, I know from the Conquer the Gauntlet community, people are saying, they stole this one or whatever, or that looks a lot like such and such, because they have one where it's a spool, one of those big, wire spools, and they have a chain or rope and a chain around it that's pulling a sled drag, and you crank it with a big handle that's on the spool. This one, Pedal to the Metal, looks very similar, but instead of a sled, I think there's just going to be a tire tied to the rope. But instead of cranking it with your hands, you literally lay on your back and put your feet on the spool and kick and push it like that to roll it up.
Oh, geez. But I have done a Conquer the Gauntlet, and I want to say I did do that with the spool at one point with their wheelbarrow, because theirs is a wheelbarrow without the wheels, and it's got a whole bunch of sandbags in it, and you just got to crank it and then drag the sled back or drag the wheelbarrow back. But holy cow, that's gonna be interesting. That's more lower body, whereas a lot of the rigs are going to be a lot more upper body. There's not very many obstacles that are really intense on the lower body, not counting like the carries or anything, and just running in general.
That's true. It is. Most of the lower body stuff is usually just running up hills or carrying stuff, which is both upper body and lower body.
Yeah, and I know I've heard some people, I don't know, there's a couple of schools of thought on those heavy carries. Like, I know a lot of people aren't a fan of the bucket carries, and they don't really see it as a real obstacle, but it is. I mean, mentally and physically, I think it is.
I think one of the funny things about it I've been hearing people say is, when you've got people literally laying on the ground doing this kicking motion, the videos that they showed about 5 or 6, maybe even more people surrounding that person, like cheering them on or whatever. But they're saying, how many are there going to be of this? Because there's going to be a backup. Because I mean, how fast can you do that with your feet?
Oh, for sure.
So is it going to be the backup that we saw in the videos? Because that doesn't look like it's going to work too well.
No. And that, I know at Conquer the Gauntlet, there's usually a pretty good backup at Pegatron. And it's just, whenever it slows down the flow of your race, it kind of kills it. You're just like stuck there waiting on an obstacle. And it kind of kills the vibe a little bit.
Yeah, it is tough, but it's a good segue to the next topic, talking about Conquer the Gauntlet. They have done some changes this year. They're doing less races, but more focusing on, partially because they're going to focus on their family, because one of the, I forget who, I think maybe Stephen Main Prize had a child. So they're, focusing more on that.
David.
Yeah. Oh,
I think it was David. Wasn't it David? I don't know. I follow him on Instagram, so I feel like it was David.
It's possible. But so they got less races. So I think that's a good thing to talk about as well, because how many races does a race do to be profitable? Of course, it all depends on how many people do you get at each event. But the more events you put out there, if it at least is offsetting your price by a little bit, your cost, then you're making something. So they've shrunk their amount of races, but I'm probably going to put a little more focus into each of those.
So I think if you're doing more races, that's a lot more traveling. That's a lot more logistics that goes into it. You have to transport all the obstacles. You've got to get volunteers for each race to help set up and tear down and run your event. Whereas I think if you put on a few events and you make those events and you invest in those events and you just make them really enjoyable for the people coming to those races, I think it'll even itself out.
You make good points.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings up the question of, what is Terrain Race doing? Terrain Race has, I believe, 50 races on their calendar this year.
Yeah, and they're one of the cheaper race series.
Yep.
Not cheap by quality. I haven't personally done a terrain race. My schedule isn't going to let me do a terrain race this year, unfortunately. But so I can't speak to the quality of their events.
Well, I've done one, so I can say that while the price is low, the quality of the race reflects that somewhat, but it's not like, oh, this is just a trash race. That, it is good. I mean, they have some good obstacles and they put on a good event. So there's enough to it. But 50 races when your entries is only, 60 maybe for the elites, and then 30 or 40 for open?
Yeah, and don't they have a multi-lap option as well? Are they
do.
One of the series that has a multi-lap option?
They do. And I've not done that because I've done the elite heat with them, but I do love multi-lap. And as you know, because we both run the Warzone heats in the battle races last year. And that, for those that don't know, it's just the same as doing toughest or what's the other races that have that option? Kind of forgetting now.
Bone Frog recently.
Yeah.
They just released it's the Bone Frog Challenge. It's just as many lap. I think theirs is a little different though, because they have 3 separate distances, and their tier 1 is their longest distance, and their sprint distance is their shorter distance. So your first lap is your tier 1 distance, and then all subsequent laps are the sprint distance. So it's as many sprint laps after your tier 1 lap.
That's right. That does sound cool. That does sound interesting. I'd like to try that. But you saying Bone Frog reminded me, it was Battle Frog. Battle Frog was the one that had the multi-lap race, Battle Frog Extreme from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. And actually, I was signed up. I can't remember if I was signed up for the Battle Frog Extreme, but I know I was signed up for a Battle Frog race the year that they went kaput, and it really bummed me out.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the series that I was really looking forward to getting into it,
Yeah. Well, I can mimic Matt B. Davis real quick and ask you, do you think that Battle Frog's ever coming back?
Well, didn't they come back, right? It's like the city challenge. Didn't somebody buy their Facebook group or Facebook
Yeah,
page or something?
has anything happened to that?
I've heard of them having races here and there, but I haven't heard it blow up as much as Battle Frog did. So I know it's more of like an urban setting OCR type event, but I haven't done one of those either. So I guess that one's going on the list eventually too.
Right. Back to Conquer Gauntlet real quick. Their medal, they introduced their medal for 2018, and it's cool because I think the past couple of years their medal has always been their lion logo, and this year it's actually got their gauntlet on it, which is pretty sweet looking. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have seen it. I like it. It still incorporates the logo, and I know after doing Conquer the Gauntlet last year, I know they kind of caught a lot of flack for their medal being just really mediocre, which some people do it for the medal, some people do it for the event, to each their own. But I remember them catching a lot of flack for, this is my medal for for doing this race. But you know what? I loved their shirts last year. Like,
yeah,
I don't care if I get like a mediocre medal. If I have an awesome finisher shirt, that's hey.
Yeah, and some people rather the medal, but they are one of the cheaper races. And for as cool of an event as they put on, they do have cheaper entry fees, and that's just part of it. I mean, you gotta cut the cost somewhere.
Right, and I think I did see one of the race directors respond to somebody saying that they looked at the mock-up for the medal and they themselves thought it was going to come out differently than what they received. But once they received the mass delivery of all their medals, it was kind of too late to go back and change it. Plus, all that costs money too. So, and personally, like, I really enjoyed their event. Their obstacles, like, you don't see them at a lot of races, like Pegatron. You don't see at really any.
You've seen a lot more and more peg stuff nowadays, but
exactly.
They definitely started it in this area, at least.
For sure. And they still reach a lot of the region that really doesn't have too much going on OCR wise. So they're still gaining a little cult following.
Right. The center part of the country definitely doesn't have as much going on, and they feel that need.
Exactly. And they still put on really great events too. I really like how they interact with the racers, race day, and taking pictures with racers and everything. They're a really down to earth, really awesome company, I think.
They are. Absolutely. It's definitely more of a family feel and a closer feel than it is with some of the big races. But it's understandable that, we can't all go talk to Joe DeSena, but we can all go talk to David Mankerprize because there's only, however many of us racing it.
Exactly. Joe DeSena actually in Tahoe thought that I was working at the Junk Brands tent. He was coming around in the Finish Festival in Tahoe, and I was shopping for headbands, and he was going around to all the vendors saying thank you for being a part of this event. And he comes up to me and he was like, "Do you work here?" I'm like, "No."
Did he say thanks anyway, or?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, that's awesome that he did that.
I was just like, oh my gosh, Joe DeSena is like here in the flesh. I usually don't see him except from afar.
I know, talking about longer distances and training and multi-laps and stuff. I know I like looking for local races, all the little charity, not necessarily 5Ks, but any obstacle race or mud run that is a local, they do one a year. Those things I think are some of the best training. Now, obviously, you can go do, CrossFit every day, and that's good training. But when it comes to like race conditions, I'm going to be on my feet for 8 hours. I've done a few where it's like they have a time, but they're okay with you going multi-laps. So just go all day and get those miles on your feet and get the feel of, taxing yourself.
Definitely. Yeah, I've done a few of those. I did that at Warrior Dash a couple of years ago where, I signed up for the competitive heat or whatever in the morning. And then I had a few friends coming to meet me at the venue later on that day that, I ran with them later on. And yeah, that's definitely a really good training run.
And it's a good way to support that too. We all want more races, so going out there and doing something like that, we're just showing support as well.
Definitely supporting local is huge.
Do you ever volunteer at it? Have you ever done any volunteering?
I have. I've volunteered.
You said that earlier, actually.
Well, technically, it wasn't a volunteer position with Savage because their medical services, they work with like an outside contractor. So that person, actually somebody from Lone Star Spartan said, hey, this company is looking for medical personnel to hire for the day. And so I was actually signed up to volunteer at that Savage race, and then I think run the next day. But I was more interested in getting paid for it since I was having to travel to Houston. So, I figured it would, it's me being in the medical field, I'm always trying to learn and everything and just get new experiences. So that was just an experience that I had never had before. So cool. I figured I would do that. But I did volunteer at the 2015 Dallas, I think it was the sprint in Glen Rose in 2015. And it was hot. It was hot that year, but I liked it. The volunteer directors were really nice. They made sure we were taken care of. Yeah, it was not a bad experience.
That's cool.
But I haven't had too many volunteer opportunities.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, that's their go-to is I'm going to volunteer one day and race the next, or volunteer in the morning and run in the afternoon to save on money. Right.
And that's how that was my volunteer race because I volunteered at that race in order to get entry into Alabama that year. So yeah, that was pretty much how I funded my habit that year.
I haven't done any volunteering yet myself, not in an official. I did at Concord Gauntlet one time just because we were staying pretty much the whole time and they needed some help because they were short staff. But the races rely on volunteers so much, and the more that we as racers understand that, I think it goes a long way. Because I don't know about you, but especially since I haven't volunteered, I try to make sure to thank all the people that do every time I pass them up.
Oh, definitely. And I got plenty of shout outs that day,
nice.
which I really appreciated, even from the elites that were trying to blow through that course because it was a sprint course. But yeah, it was a really good experience. And I know, being a part of battle and battle races, yeah, volunteers are a huge part of how well race day goes. And, you have to have manpower to go set up, and it's not an easy feat setting up those obstacles and marking out the course and making sure racers are taken care of and having a good flow through registration and everything. So it's definitely, I recommend it just so you can see both sides of running the race and kind of being in the background and seeing how everything works and what it takes to put on an event.
Giving an appreciation for it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So to everybody out there listening that has volunteered before, a huge thank you. And if you keep doing it, then, hey, we'll make sure to give you a high five and say thanks again on the course.
For sure. And it's definitely a good way to get free races.
Mm-hmm. I went and did the SoCal Super this past at the end of January. And I wanted to talk about it, but at the same time, I want to share something that I'm not sure if I've even shared with you yet. I know I haven't shared with a ton of people, just kind of what's been going on with me at the beginning of this year. And the main reason I want to share it is for anybody out there, just in case somebody comes into the same situation, that they can hopefully recognize it sooner. Because really what I'm about to share is something that could really hurt you and be really dangerous. So anyway, the beginning of the year, I started just noticing that everything was kind of harder. I was getting more fatigued more quickly and more often. I even went on couple day hike, and it was tough getting to the top of the mountain and just being like, wow, I feel dead. So about when it came time for that race, I think I ran to the first obstacle, and I ran a little bit after that, but pretty much from that point on, I ended up walking. So it was a 2-hour sprint for me, which is, I know some people, no offense to people that take longer than that, it's fine. Everybody's got their own speed. But for me, close to an hour is going to be my sprint time. So it was definitely something was wrong. And I recognize that. That race, though, it was a cool race. I'll get into exactly what happened in a second. But that race was real interesting because I think they moved the event to a new location for this year. And the temperature, this was January 27th, I believe, and the temperature was about 60 degrees that morning, starting out. And it got to 70 plus, maybe even higher than that, maybe even 80 by the midday.
Yeah, that's pretty hot for January.
Exactly. That's the thing that was awesome about it is I know people love SoCal for that whole reason is it's always beautiful weather out there. And it really was. It was just amazing to be able to go race in January and it just feels so good.
And not be 20 degrees.
Exactly. The wind was crazy too. It's kind of rare that you get heavy winds in a race, but the sun was out, but the wind was just blowing strong. So anyway, my issue, why I felt so fatigued. I went to the doctor after that had happened, and they took some blood, and they basically called me about 3 hours later after they had tested it and said, your blood is half the hemoglobin levels that it should be. And anybody that knows hemoglobin levels, they say it should be 12 to 14, and mine was at 6. So
wow.
they said, you're anemic, which I've never been. You have lost half of your blood. Go to the hospital, go to the ER right now and get a blood transfusion, which
I'm surprised you were even up around walking.
Yeah, it felt crazy because I knew something was wrong, but I was going about my business, just doing whatever I needed to do. And I knew I felt fatigued, but anyways, so I went and they did a lot of tests. They thought that it would be something internal. And so they checked, all my internals, except for my small intestine, but they checked the other intestines and my gut and my stomach and my throat, and they didn't find anything that they thought was the reason, which was kind of odd. So the jury is still out on it. They're going to still do some more testing, but they ended up giving me blood and iron to get those levels back up. So it's just for people that are out there to keep track of or keep mindful of is if you feel more fatigued than usual when doing anything other than sitting around or walking, go get your blood checked.
Definitely. And, a lot of times you chalk that up to, I'm just getting older, things just aren't as easy anymore, but it could definitely
I ate too much over the holidays and didn't exercise enough.
Exactly. But yeah, it could definitely be something serious underlying. That's crazy. And I had a similar experience whenever I went to go donate blood. I wasn't anemic per se, but they told me I was really low on iron. So I started having to take iron supplements for a little while and I couldn't donate blood, but they still call me, every month to go donate blood. But yeah. And your body better than anybody else. So if something doesn't feel right, definitely go have it checked.
Exactly. And I felt like my blood wasn't getting to my legs the way it should. And when I talked to the doctor, he said, as a doctor, that's one of the best things you can do is listen to your patient. And that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah. And it's very good to find a doctor or a healthcare professional that will listen to you and not just say, you're just getting older, or, you just need to tone it back a little. Because being our age, you never expect for anything real wild or crazy to be going on, but you just never know.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to look at the people in our sport and be like, no, that's not the case, because there's plenty of people that are running masters that are kicking my butt. So.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But you know what? You can't escape genetics either. So definitely if you have a family history, get everything checked out.
Now, I ran the sprint that weekend because my buddy Fat Tony, if anybody knows him from the BMX scene, or he had his own podcast called the Expansion Project. Pretty cool guy. He's really into CrossFit, and he ran his first obstacle race. He had always told me, hey, if there's one out here, come on out and I'll do it with you. And since he is into CrossFit, he wasn't ready to do, 7 miles. So we just did the sprint, and he did pretty good. He did, I think in our age group, he got maybe 18th or so.
That's not bad at all for doing a
First time. Yep. Yeah. Now I heard that on the Twister on Sunday, because they didn't have it in the sprint, but now they're doing it with pads that are wrapped around, the grips. So they, I believe, roll in your hand or around the bar, which obviously can make you slip off easier.
Because apparently too many people were ripping their hands on that obstacle.
Yep.
And they put grips on thinking it would help people, but no, the grips move. So it was kind of counterproductive. But I've started seeing videos now of people getting around the grips, just grabbing the vertical part instead of the horizontal part that's covered, and the vertical part isn't covered. It's a little bit weirder of a grip, but yeah, I've seen people doing that now.
I've heard that as well, and that does seem irritating and odd, but but even since then I've seen where they're making it to where some lanes have the grips and some lanes don't, which I think is really awesome of them to, hey, we have this issue, we put a fix to it, people complain about that now, so here's our compromise. Exactly.
I like that idea. I think I would definitely go without the grips, but yeah, I like that idea. And they do a similar thing with their rigs, where some lanes are elite lanes and the other lanes are a little bit easier.
Yeah, I think somebody needs to make a meme with the Bear Grylls thing, show people complaining about I don't know, it seems too complicated now, but the adapt and react and all that stuff. Yeah, that's what they're doing. Good job, Spartan.
That's what OCR is all about.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. How about obstacle course racing media? We talked about it earlier, but they're doing, even from, I forget who said it, maybe Matt B. Davis said that it's more of a ESPN style. Maybe it was Benny. I think it was Benny. Benny is the one that said it.
I've seen kind of a couple of videos on it. I haven't really dived into it as much, but I've seen a few videos of it, and it is a little bit ESPN-ish.
Yeah, and they've launched their website now, and they're saying they're trying to be the hub for all things obstacle racing. And that's real interesting because, we have so many competing parts of the sport, and everybody tries to work together, and then sometimes they don't. But with this one, it's going to take a real collaboration for that to actually be the case.
Definitely. And it adds to the body of information that's already out there. But, being the hub of everything, I'm not sure. We'll see how that pans out. But, it definitely contributes a lot, for sure.
Yeah. And I know at World Obstacle Racing World Championships, because it is a completely separate entity from all these other races, you do see a lot of media collaboration there. So you'll see Mud Run Guide, but then the guys from BroCR and some French people from Mudstacle, like they're all working together to bring live feed the entire day. It's really cool.
Yeah, and it's a lot to keep up with sometimes whenever you have several different feeds going on to try and keep up with on race day. But I think if there was one central spot where you could go watch that kind of stuff, it would definitely make it a lot more convenient for sure.
Yeah.
I think it's a good idea.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see how it pans out. We'll see how they run with that. And Benny Gifford's a part of it. So I think a lot of the success of it is going to be the athletes getting involved, because you don't have you have some, but you don't have a lot of athletes that are strictly, Spartan or Tough Mudder, or you have a lot of these OCR athletes that are going to take part in a lot of these different events. So,
right.
It's going to be a lot of info from the front lines.
Yep. And that's kind of what we're hoping to do here too, on a casual scale, of course. But I love seeing people who are into all kinds of different races. No offense to the Tough Mudder crowd in particular, because I know they love their Tough Mudder, and that's great. Tough Mudder is a really cool thing. I guess there's just more to experience to me.
Well, yeah, Tough Mudder and Spartan definitely have their diehards, but to each their own. And I can definitely appreciate things from both franchises. But personally, I just like different races.
Yeah, I was listening to World's Toughest Podcast this morning while I was running, and Will Hicks was talking about how awesome Ryan Atkins is when you pass him, or excuse me, when he passes you on a course.
Nobody passes Ryan Atkins. What are you talking about?
When he passes you, if you say, "Hey Ryan," or "Good job," or he's going to say something back, and he's a real awesome dude like that. But he said, if he doesn't say it, I will record a whole episode on Spartan Race. And then he joked and said, "No, I'm not going to do that. Don't do that, because that's going to, you don't need it. He doesn't need all that distraction from every single person on the course." But
right.
I thought it was comical that was his, here's my end of the bet. I'll record a Spartan podcast.
Oh gosh. That would be interesting to hear. But yeah, Ryan doesn't need all that distraction, which, he's so dialed in. That guy is just not human. Oh my goodness. He's just, I know it's been said a lot, but he's just got everything down to a science, and he's definitely experiencing the success of that training that he puts in for sure. And yeah, he is a really down to earth guy. We ran into him at a couple races last year. We ran into him and Lindsay in Asheville, and during Tahoe, saw him run by on some of the obstacles, and I was on the course and watching some of the racers do their Ultra Beast in Tahoe, or attempt their Ultra Beast in Tahoe last year. And he ran by me a couple of times, and like totally chill dude, very approachable. Like you think, oh, it's Ryan Atkins, oh my gosh, and you start like fangirling, but but you just go up to him and he's just a totally normal dude.
Yeah.
Him and Lindsay, they're both really awesome. I remember whenever I saw Lindsay in Asheville, she was like, "Oh yeah, you look really strong out there." I was like, "Lindsay Webster just said I looked really strong on that obstacle." Awesome. Like, I geeked out in my head a little bit.
That's fantastic. All right, Tough Mudder. Tough Mudder, I think, has had the most news going on lately out of anybody.
Yeah, and even more so lately, which, yeah, we can get into that. But yeah, they're putting out a lot of new events. Their short course, their 5K, TMX, the half, and the full, which I heard the full in some venues is going to be 2 laps of the half.
Yeah, I'm real interested to see if that carries through for the rest of the year, because they're saying, this is a change that we're going to make for the year. But will it be? If the people are racing, if they don't like it, how are they going to react and adapt to that?
Exactly. And I think it was whenever I was listening to ORM podcast, Matt B. Davis, it was going to be the Toughest Mudder, or Tough Mudder LA, that they were going to kind of test that concept, see what the response was, and kind of go from there. But, as we now know, that kind of all fell flat because it got canceled due to the mudslide. So
as of today, the 4th, and the race was supposed to be yesterday, and they canceled that for sure. Have you seen any information about today yet?
I have not, no.
I can't say I've seen anything.
I think the whole thing was canceled. That was my impression of it.
Yeah, they were keeping it open, I think, but saying, as soon as we know something, then we're going to put it out there. But I can't say I've actually seen if they canceled Sunday. I know, the regular Saturday and Toughest, the night race, are canceled for sure, or were.
Yeah, those were definitely canceled, which I know a lot of people were going out there for the first Toughest. So that was kind of a bummer.
Which is an interesting topic in itself when that kind of stuff has to happen. It's a shame, but it does happen from time to time. And the race companies, just do. I think most of them try to do the best they can to give back either transitions to another race or transfers, or sometimes they do refunds, even though they say they don't do refunds. There's been races that have done that.
Yeah, you can't control the weather, so some things are just out of your control. And things like mudslides, it's crazy.
Right. I wonder if any of the other. So if you transfer your toughest to another toughest, if that's going to make any of the other toughest have a bigger crowd than what they probably would have had otherwise.
I would imagine so, because I know there's a lot of people getting into that toughest category now.
Now, so yeah, they've got. I mean, shoot, we could sit here and list all of their new races or race formats, but you probably hear that everywhere else enough as is.
Yeah.
They've got one for everybody, I believe. But I think the real interesting thing is to how they are marketing it now. The whole fastest, fittest, and toughest. So it's almost like they're breaking apart the different race groups. So whereas toughest and world's toughest fit into a group together in the toughest category, fittest is TMX, I believe.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, because they go towards the CrossFit hybrid crowd.
yeah, and fastest is the tougher. So this is all competitive stuff. It's not including the 5K or the full or the half.
Yeah, I think the 5K and the half concepts were more geared towards just attracting people to the sport.
Right. So you got the competitive group of races, and then you've got the challenge group of races.
Yeah, the challenge group of races, they have a lot to offer as far as competitive wise, because you definitely see with a lot of the elites now, they're starting to specialize more
Right.
in short courses or longer courses or endurance courses. So I think they have a lot to offer this
Which
year.
is really cool that they're a big enough company that they've been able to pull this off, because obviously smaller companies to branch out into something new is a big investment. And they've been able to do that and put out that investment. And it's really, I mean, we're the ones that are winning because we have so many options now.
Yeah. What do you think is their secret to success? I mean, I guess, well, okay.
Those Tough Mudder diehards that we keep talking about, maybe?
Exactly, yeah. Probably, yeah. I think just like Spartan, they've had their little cult following, just like you have Tough Mudders diehards. So there's definitely that, but...
Well, they've kept it so specific, saying we are not a race for so long that they built what they have, and then they branched out. So they spent, 5 years, maybe 6, I don't remember exactly, but building that group of people that run it just because it's fun.
Right. And it's a lot of this OCR stuff comes back to community, but it was more geared towards people helping other people and that kind of crowd where you just sign up for a race and, you just all go out there and help each other. Whereas once Spartan started becoming more competitive, you saw a lot of crossover, and I think that's where they were trying to keep up.
Yeah.
And they started coming up with their own concepts.
Right. And I think, honestly, they've hit home runs all the way around. It's pretty awesome to see the events that they're putting out.
Definitely. They've given Spartan a run for their money. Definitely. Because you, just like you had people that were diehard Tough Mudders go to Spartan for their competitive races, now you see a lot of Spartan people crossing over and going to Tough Mudder.
Yeah.
So, and they've found, look at Ryan Atkins. He did Spartans for so long, and he's found a lot of success with Tough Mudder.
Yeah, and Ryan Atkins has been at it at World's Toughest since, I believe, 2013 or so, maybe, I believe 2013. He was doing that, every year since then, but now there's so many more races that he does. Now, I know he's definitely done some just regular fulls before they had a competitive wave, but now there's way more races that he would show up to, I believe.
Especially now that he's official Tough Mudder pro team. They made that official.
Let's talk about their new stuff for the for 2018. Their new obstacles. Their new obstacles stuff. They really didn't have a ton this year, but they did make some changes with the competitive side of things.
Yeah, because a lot of their obstacles are geared towards the teamwork aspect. So now that they're getting into more competitive stuff, and the endurance stuff, they have to modify a lot of their obstacles so that, one person can complete an obstacle and not need, 5 people helping them up Everest or something.
So whereas this past year it was more so the competitive part of the race did the Legionnaire stuff, as well as having the ropes down like Everest or Pyramid Scheme, yeah. But now they're changing it even more to where you've got Funky Monkey with, instead of monkey bars, they're supposedly going to have all sorts of different grips, which we were going to see this weekend, but now we'll have to wait, I guess, to see what that's actually going to be like.
Which, when is their next race? Is their next race New Orleans? Because I'm really bummed that I can't go to New Orleans, but if that's all going to come on New Orleans.
Oh, yeah. I'll be there to let you know how it was.
Awesome.
But yeah, it could be. I mean, they've got 2 weeks since then, till then, so they may have one next weekend. I can't imagine them not having one on a weekend.
Right. I can't remember their schedule exactly, but I just know New Orleans is in 2 weeks, so
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how they take a lot of their concepts that they were going to test out and test it out in New Orleans.
Right. That'll be pretty cool. Everest 2.0, it's going to have that extended wall on one side of the thing, so it'll be like Everest used to be, where it didn't have the curved top. It'll just go straight up, but it'll extend like another 2 or 3 feet.
Did they have that at World's Toughest?
They did this year. Now, I wasn't there for that, but they did have it, and it looked... I come from a skateboarding background, so running up stuff like that feels somewhat easy because I just know how to run up a curved ramp. But they extend it, so you've got to really get up it higher. So anybody that's out there training, get used to the warped wall, because that's where you really learn how to run up those things.
Yes, warped walls are really fun, by the way.
Yeah.
Warped walls are really fun. And I know that rounded top, I didn't like it personally because, whenever you're running up a wall and you want to kind of propel yourself up and try and grab onto something, there was really nothing to grab onto. So I know I got a lot of scrapes and bruises from that last year. So that's going to be, I think that'll make it almost easier. Even though it's higher, I think it'll make it almost easier.
One thing I'll say is about Everest, if it's a dry day and you're running, this may not be a problem for you, but when you're running without a shirt on, do your best not to slide back down the thing.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That plastic.
It will.
Whatever it is.
Oh, that hurts. Yeah, I fell down Everest several times, and just, running in shorts and sliding down it, that was not a good idea.
Yeah. Now, rope-a-dope is a new... I know I didn't see this even last year in 2017 in New Orleans, but it is a newer obstacle for Tough Mudder, where in the competitive ways of Tougher, it's basically just like a rope across a moat, and you can kind of swing across it because it's tied down or weighted at the bottom. But the toughest, have you seen the toughest version of that?
I have not. I saw rope-a-dope during the World's Toughest feat.
Okay, so yeah, you know what it's like then, where they were climbing up it and then they had to shimmy down another rope at an angle.
Okay, yeah, see, I was getting that one confused with what's the one where they have to jump out onto the bar that swings across? Swingers. Yes, King of Swingers. And they have to grab the little triangle of a cargo net.
Yeah, they did that first for sure, and it's probably where they got rope-a-dope from. But yeah, they're going to have rope-a-dope as a newer obstacle as well. So without the traverse, but just having to get across the moat. But you kind of have to swing it, but you kind of can't if it's weighted down. So I'm not really sure.
I saw a lot of people struggling with that on the feed because it's weighted down. It's not like a traditional rope climb, where you can just use your foot wraps or whatever to get up the rope. But because there's a weight at the bottom, it's a little bit more difficult, I think. Yeah,
that'll be real interesting. And I'd say the probably two most interesting changes this year is, one, the finisher obstacle is not going to be Kong, and it's not going to be electric shock therapy. It's going to be happy ending, which looks like Pyramid Scheme with a curve to it and water spraying down on you.
Kind of like their Augustus Gloop. Oh my goodness.
Right. But while people are trying to make a pyramid.
Right. I like those obstacles just because I feel like I'm getting clean. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm getting a shower. But yeah, that's going to be interesting because a lot of people try and make that big pyramid of people going up that wall, and
Yeah.
that's going to be interesting.
But they're all muddy, and so it makes it even harder. Yeah, this will
Exactly.
be
Yeah,
the clean version of that.
yeah, the cleaner version, exactly. So that's going to be the finisher obstacle then.
Yeah. So electroshock therapy is supposed to be in the course, like in the middle of the course somewhere,
And
which means you don't get the option to skip it
right.
unless you take possibly a penalty loop if they do that.
I envision them.
Well, some people can't do it just because they have, pacemakers or whatever.
Right.
So they got to have some kind of option, I believe.
Yeah, more than likely. I was able to. I don't think I got shocked by it last year. I kind of like navigated my way through it just because I was so scared of like just getting shocked once and falling down flat on my face in the mud pit because I passed out from the electric shock or something.
And I did it my first time, first Tough Mudder ever. And then every time after that, I've always taken the Legionnaire option because it's just not fun. Some people enjoy it, but I didn't enjoy it too much.
Well, and last year the Legionnaire options was Kong at the end versus electroshock therapy. And I really wanted to get on Kong. I'm really kicking myself that I did not get up on that obstacle because I really wanted to try it out.
Yeah, it was fun. Especially the competitive version, they would take out the first ring, so you would have to leap and jump out towards the first ring, which is really cool.
Which it looks simple because it's just rings, but they put it 20 feet up in the air.
And that jump out really kind of throws in like a whole cliff aspect to it too, where you're just fighting against your own thoughts.
Yeah, I don't do well with heights, so yeah.
So I think I don't mind electroshock therapy being in the middle of the course for the tougher wave, except that it's going to be two laps.
Exactly.
You have to do it twice. But particularly at the toughest events, if it's going to be in the middle, you just got to do it all night long. That just sounds terrible.
Oh, that does sound terrible. And during World's Toughest, they had a different. It wasn't electroshock therapy, but it was, what do they call it? Pandora's Box, where you had to crawl.
Yeah.
Through.
For 2017, it was Pandora's Box. For the 2 years before that, it was Operation, which Operation, if you figure out how to do it well, you can do it without getting shocked fairly easily.
Yeah, but Pandora's Box, you pretty much had to low crawl through that, whatever they had built over it, and like you didn't know if you're going to get shocked or not.
I heard somebody say, if you do ever see it, if you splash, keep your arms in front of you and splash water, the water will hit the wires and cause that shock to go off before you're touching it. And then by the time it's going over the shock has happened.
It's a pretty smart solution. Yeah. Huh. Never thought of it that way.
Take a hose with me through electroshock therapy.
Exactly. I'm gonna need to carry a spray bottle with me during World's Toughest. I'm going to have to carry it in my gear bag. It's going on the list.
Well, yeah, so all very, very interesting stuff. I think the last thing really to be said that's of important news is that Spartan offered free races for everybody that got canceled out in Los Angeles for Tough Mudder.
Yes, and I saw that, and I remember seeing Bro CR saying, we poked the bear or something along those lines. But, I mean, like I said earlier, those two are just going back and forth. I mean, they're competition for sure.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of, come do our race instead, but at the same time, you get a little bit of we're helping you out because we're all OCR.
Exactly. And that's one part of it. And you got to kind of wonder too, what their numbers were like for their Las Vegas race, like what their registration numbers, because they were on the same weekend.
Right.
So you got to kind of wonder about that too. But I do like how they kind of said, hey, we'll take in your racers. I'm sure there was a little jab in there, but for the racers, it was probably a good thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, and so close to them making that video about Tough Mudder. Well, we need Will Hicks's soundboard to do the music for that thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think let's wrap it up there. Unless you got anything else you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so. Little throwback to Matthew Davis. I think the only thing I want to say is just to encourage people to go to check out our Facebook page. If you have anything else to add to the conversation, or if you thought of something that we didn't talk about that you want to hear more about, definitely put in your input there and we'll take a look at it and maybe put it in a future episode.
Yeah, absolutely. It's facebook.com/OCR talk. So that's what we want with this. We want everybody listening to come and join our conversation. I know too many times I've listened to a podcast and be like, well, man, here's my thoughts, but there's not really a good place to, you can go on there, post for the episode, but it kind of gets lost, I think, sometimes. Not all the time, but really that's what we want, is everybody to join in and let's have a conversation together. We talked about a lot of stuff and there's a lot going on, so join in. I'll make sure to post that somewhere, the link to it, but again, facebook.com/OCR talk. So hopefully we'll get this podcast out within a few days, and we'll have it on Stitcher and iTunes and all those other places if I can figure out how to do all that.
Available in all formats, iPhone and Android friendly.
Yeah, absolutely. Anna, thanks so much. Look forward to chatting with you about this stuff kind of here and there. We're going to look out and to do 1 or 2 episodes a month to start off with to see how it goes.
Definitely looking forward to it. It's fun.
Awesome. Well, anybody that's out there actually listening to this, thank you all so much. That's fantastic and awesome. Really hoping to get your feedback. Let us know what you thought about it. Do you think we're cool or we're stupid? And let's have that conversation. All right, guys. Thank you so much, Anna. Talk to you later.
Wow.